influence a lot of you not only to eat plant-based, but to eat plant-based in a very clean kind of way where you will feel energetic and happy and sort of full and vibrant all the time. I found veganism in kind of a very interesting way. We happened to be on a trip to Costa Rica, and I've always been really interested in the element of performance and recovery and how to get the best recovery possible. And that just seemed very elusive to me at the time. This was several years ago. And, you know, I was always working out, but kind of feeling tired. I was a pescatarian at the time. And I just couldn't figure it out. So we go to Costa Rica, and we're spending time with a group of people within our travel group who are vegans. And immediately, you know, my certification as a personal trainer kicks in, and I'm like, oh, vegans, right? They're not getting enough protein, you know, they must be weak, they're not going to be able to keep up with us hiking and all this sort of stuff. And of course, I am floored by their endurance, by how much energy they have, by how happy and vibrant they are all the time. And I say, you know what, when I get back, I'm going to do 2 weeks as a vegan. And I'm just going to see how this goes, you know? Just as an experiment, I didn't plan on doing anything long term. But wouldn't you know, at the end of 2 weeks, I'm like, I feel amazing. Like all that exhaustion went away and all the sort of like stuffiness, you know, you guys get a lot of congestion if you're eating dairy, like all that went away. And all of a sudden I'm like, I feel amazing. There's no way I'm giving this up. And that led me to really kind of try to promote it a little bit more with my athletes. But as you guys know, in the world of athletics, it's a little bit of a hard sell. Because of course everybody has the protein thing, and everybody kind of, in this audience, you know, when you tell kids about veganism, they're interested in, wow, you know, what do you eat? How can I try it? What can I do? When you tell adults that you're vegan, then you kind of get this look like, oh, you're malnourished. Yeah. And all of you know that look. Yeah. You don't get enough to eat. Do I look malnourished? I don't think so. You know, but that's kind of a stereotype I think that we're dealing with a lot. The other thing that I find is, you know, just athletes in general, they eat horribly for the most part. You know, they're really bad eaters. They'll wake up, they'll have processed cereal, they'll have, you know, Frosted Flakes, they'll have Pop-Tarts, they'll, in between games, they'll have like a sub. Like, what are you possibly digesting and then using for your performance after that? And really the answer is almost none of it. So it's become more of a passion of mine to not only have people eat more plant-based, but know a good way to eat plant-based, because of course, you know, a vegan donut is unfortunately still a donut. Sugar still causes inflammation, and you know, if my husband's over there with a guilty look on his face, that means that he did just consume a vegan donut. We'll have it out later, but that's okay. It's okay to indulge every once in a while, but you know, you gotta be careful about all that. So what I want to talk a little bit about today is something called micronutrients. So some of you may be familiar with this already, but the thing is, especially with athletes, I find they know a considerable amount about macronutrients, or at least they think they do. And they seem to think, you know, oh my god, whey protein is the be-all and the end-all, when in fact, of course, it is a dairy byproduct. And they can't understand why they're getting so much stomach upset and, you know, issues with digestion, GI issues, you know, when they're eating this is basically a dairy byproduct. Whereas it's amazing, you know, it turns some people on to Vega, and they absolutely never look back. That's an awesome brand, by the way, if you guys have never tried it before. Vega is incredible, especially on the recovery end of things, like we use it all the time. And I'm unfortunately not sponsored by them, but I'm telling you, go represent that food. So in any event, what we're looking for in terms of, you know, our micronutrients is we're looking to get the most out of the things that we eat instead of just kind of getting, you know, protein, carbs, fats. Those are our macronutrients, right? And I think the thing that's very difficult is to say, oh, okay, well, I need a certain amount of protein, and I need a certain amount of carbs, and I need a certain amount of fat. And reality kind of tells us, well, okay, yes, you're going to have all these things, and if you're a little, you know, protein deficient, maybe you'll be a little bit tired or something like that. But if you are deficient in micronutrients, let's say you're way deficient in vitamin A. Okay, so that's the leading cause of preventable blindness in, you know, developing countries. Let's say, you know, you're deficient in vitamin C. Well, that is, you know, how people have gotten scurvy. Let's say you're deficient in, you know, any number of things that produce proper chemical processes in your body. Well, then you're not going to perform optimally and you're not going to recover optimally. And that's true whether you're an athlete or whether you're a lay person. You're just simply not going to feel your best. So if your diet is, even if it is a vegan diet, and it's, you know, predominantly consisting of processed wheat, seitan, you know, processed tofu, you're still not going to feel your best. You probably still have a lot of inflammation. You're probably going to say, you know what, veganism doesn't work for me. Well, it's not that veganism doesn't work for you, inflammatory foods don't work for you. That's a very, very different set of circumstances. So, if you guys are familiar with Dr. Joel Fuhrman, he has a nice formula. It's not a totally perfect formula, but where he said health equals micronutrients over caloric density. And I think that that's a really good formula, given the fact that we're learning that obviously these micronutrients are so, so important. So your next question is probably, well, okay, I do eat a lot of tofu and I do eat a lot of seitan and all that. So how do I end up getting more micronutrients in my diet and, you know, still meeting all my macronutrient requirements? Well, there are a lot of options, So how many of you are familiar with the term superfood? I'm sure you guys have heard it. You know, and there's a lot of hype out there. And, you know, some superfoods are really, you know, I mean, if you're putting, let's say, like a noni drink and like, you know, a lot of sugar and so on and so forth, maybe that's not the best thing for you. But I mean, did you know that goji berries are pretty much a complete source of protein, and they have, you know, all the carbohydrates you need? It's really amazing when you look at foods from the perspective of what can give me the most micronutrients for the least amount of calories, as opposed to, you know, how can I just get the least amount of calories, or how can I get the most protein? You'll feel totally different. So, on the other side of things, you're looking at a population right now that's very deficient in micronutrients in general, even though we're, as a nation, we're incredibly obese. So something in the neighborhood of like 73% of us are magnesium deficient. That's a staggering number considering how much people are eating on a regular basis. But why is it that we're not getting enough nutrients in our food? Because of course it's all been processed out. You know, so we have to look at the more holistic, whole food forms of things to get the most that we possibly can out of everything. So let's talk a little bit about what a craving is, because, you know, we do all get cravings, you know, especially if you're new to a vegan diet. I think, you know, cravings are a huge part of it. But a craving is usually actually your body calling out for a specific micronutrient. So let's say, for example, it's very, very common to have a craving for chocolate, right? For most women, this happens right before the menstrual cycle, right? So a lot of the time, that's actually a craving for magnesium. But of course, the problem is that the food's been so processed down that, guess what, if you have a chocolate bar, even if it's a chocolate bar, you're probably not getting magnesium. Or you're getting it in such small amounts that you would continue to want to eat so much more of it. But now, what is very high in magnesium is raw cacao. So if you feel as though, you know, geez, I'm having this chocolate craving, it never goes away, like, or I always get it right before my period, well, guess what? You could probably try some raw cacao, get the magnesium you need, feel a lot better, and you've got, you know, it takes care of everything on every level. The other thing is for athletes, of course, magnesium is very, very important because it allows for smoother muscle contractions and allows you to heal a lot faster. And I mean, in terms of healing, I cannot even tell you. I'm a CrossFitter, and you know, that they're very paleo there. They feel like vegetarianism is like the worst thing to ever happen to America. But realistically, I mean, I think people are kind of astonished, like, wow, you're not sore after that workout? Or, you know, wow, you pulled a muscle and you healed in 2 days? How is that possible? I'm like a unicorn there, like, they just don't know what's up. But really, if they take a minute to, like, listen to what the plant-based diet can do, especially as you try to get higher in micronutrients, and especially as you eat foods that make your body more alkaline, recovery is just a natural part of that process. If you felt like, oh, you know, I ran 2 miles and I was exhausted for 2 days afterwards, and you think that possibly that's your diet, well, it probably is. But it's not the fact that your diet's vegan, it's the fact that your diet is not a clean eating kind of vegan, it's the fact that you're eating a lot of processed stuff. So, what's another thing that we can do to get more micronutrients? Well, if you've never tried fermenting your food, then that's a really good thing to do. So, fermented foods would be kimchi, or there are really easy ways to just ferment things like rice just by simply soaking them. You can ferment any kind of grain, actually. You can do steel-cut oats, and it just adds a little bit more to that nutrient density, and it adds a little bit more to your recovery. It just adds more to your energy and to your life. So I know a lot of you are out there right now and you're like, okay, micronutrients, great. I take a daily multivitamin, like I'm fine, I don't see what you're talking about, I should be getting all the vitamins I need from that. So the issue with synthetic vitamins, in essence, is that they do not really necessarily work harmoniously. So for example, if you go to the doctor, your doctor tests your blood, says, oh, you're low in B12, well, let's actually say vitamin D. Let's say the doctor says you're low in vitamin D. And apparently this is an epidemic right now. Everybody's low in vitamin D. So the issue with it is they'll give you 1,000 milligrams of vitamin D, and you'll go back and you're still low in vitamin D. So how is this working? Well, really, the medical field right now doesn't have a great understanding of how vitamins and micronutrients work synergistically in your body. So for example, the reason you might always be low in vitamin D would be because maybe you don't have enough vitamin K on board, or maybe you don't have enough magnesium. So the best way to get your micronutrients is from whole food plant sources and not from synthetic means. Also because synthetically you don't even know what's in there half the time, whereas with whole foods, you know exactly what you're getting. And it's much, much better as a source. So, in other words, we're trying to look for the purest form to get our vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, so on and so forth. The other thing, and I know we've talked a lot today, I've listened to a lot of speakers, everybody has been wonderful on the speaking platform. I mean, I've been in heaven the last 2 days, I have to tell you. But I know a lot of people are saying, well, okay, I'm on a budget, you know, it's really difficult to buy organic, which is obviously going to be the best way to get the most micronutrients, because many of you know if you're buying non-organic or genetically modified foods, there's been recent research to show that that is, of course, lower in vitamins, and that is lower in nutrients than its organic counterpart. So my advice to you on that end would be, and we have recently started doing this, you know, even if you buy frozen, like let's say instead of buying like, you know, whole broccoli, like out in the open, organic that way, if you have to buy frozen instead and, you know, make stir fries that way and so on and so forth, that's a lot easier on your budget. Same thing with fruits, especially, you know, it's hard to get a lot of stuff in season up in New York here at this time of year. So if you are on a budget, then frozen fruits and vegetables can make it a lot easier for you to still get all the stuff that you need, still get it organic, and not be missing a lot of these essential nutrients. So I do highly recommend watching Genetic Roulette if you haven't seen it yet, because that is a really good source of information about why to eat organic and why really, for the most part, you should stay away from GMOs or anything related to GMOs. I also think another thing that's really important for athletes or people who are just looking to optimize performance is to know how to read a label. So, for example, if you're looking on the label and you're just saying, well, you know, this has such and such an amount of fat, and this has such and such an amount of carbohydrates, because it's high in fat, and it's high in carbohydrates, I'm not going to eat that, okay, because it doesn't have enough protein in it. You're really missing a larger picture there, because it's so much more important as to where it's sourced. So, for example, if you're looking at a label, and it's mostly sourced from, you know, nuts and dates, and therefore it's a little bit higher in carbohydrates and it's a little bit higher in fat, okay. But on the flip side of that, if they have a lot of weird names for different sugars and a lot of synthetically processed stuff in there, okay, well that's a good reason to avoid the amount of carbohydrates in there, or the fat, or the sugar. So you're looking for stuff that you can't pronounce, and then basically just get that out of there, because most of the time that doesn't have a whole lot of stuff that your body can use in it anyway. And if you've read Pandora's Lunchbox, which is another book that I highly recommend, you're going to find that really we don't know so much what kind of effect these kind of preservatives have on our body. And it's really kind of a little bit scary. And they're thinking, you know, that it has a lot to do with why people are having so many GI issues now, because the process by which these things get into our food is like really frightening, It's basically like Scout's honor, you know, I didn't put anything really dangerous in there, but when it's, you know, an issue of people making a lot of money, of course they're going to sneak by some stuff that really probably should not be in the human system ever. So that's what's really important, to read your labels to get the most out of your nutrition. So some things to avoid when you're looking for optimal performance. You're really looking to avoid all those heavily processed food with any synthetic ingredients, anything that's been stripped of all the important aspects of it. For example, you know, you can look at a piece of whole grain bread, but a lot of the time it's been bleached and then synthetically sprayed with vitamins. So if you're not gluten sensitive, then really the best way to get any kind of a wheat would be like a sprouted wheat. You know, anything beyond that, I really don't think wheat is like too worthwhile eating, because you're not getting the full benefit of the wheat germ and everything. The other thing you want to try to avoid, of course, sugar is very inflammatory, but again, processed sugar. So, you know, if you have a little bit here, you have a little bit there, you're having it in fruit, that makes a difference in terms of how it's processed. As an athlete, right, if you have some sugar and nuts like right before you get out there to perform, that's going to be pretty good for you, you know, because that's going to kind of slow down how that sugar burns, but you're getting enough carbohydrate to fuel your workout. So that's an excellent way to start out. But if you're having a Pop-Tart, you're going to totally bump. It's a completely different type of sugar and a completely different type of effect on the body. Obviously, you want to stay away from anything like high fructose corn syrup or conventional soda. But you also want to watch your stimulants, right? So anything like coffee or anything that could produce a subsequent adrenal fatigue, you just want to see how that impacts your body. Some people do pretty well with caffeine and they don't get jittery. And I am not one of those people. I become an insane person when I have a lot of coffee. Like, you have to throw the tranquilizer dart at me. I just don't need that, But some people are okay with it. Some things that, might give you a little bit of a stimulant, but are still, not quite as let's say, high caffeine as coffee. You can have yerba mate, you can have green tea. I just tried this Runa tea the other day. That's pretty good stuff. We have a lot of really good vendors in here this year. I also think something you want to really consider, if you haven't been feeling like you have your optimal performance, whether it's in your daily life or as an athlete, is what kind of foods might you be sensitive to? And this can vary from person to person, but dairy is a huge source of sensitivity. So if you are a vegetarian right now and you're considering, maybe I should try the vegan lifestyle, cutting out dairy, I can tell you right now, you're going to feel like so much less inflammation, your nose is going to stop running, your allergies are going to be so much better. It's a completely different way of life. But some other foods that kind of tend to create sensitivity are soy, wheat, corn, yeast, am I missing any? Oh, and sometimes peanuts. So what would be some ways that you can tell that you might have a food sensitivity as opposed to a food allergy? Well, an allergy, you can usually do a scratch test, or if it's severe enough, you would have an anaphylactic response. Your throat closes up, it's pretty obvious, okay? But a sensitivity kind of plays on your body in a different way. For example, when I was pescatarian, I definitely thought it was a dairy issue because I would wake up feeling, always congested, always kind of run down, always like a mild flu-like symptom, almost like you're getting a cold. And if you feel that this might be the case for you, especially let's say that you're already vegan and you have migraines, well, maybe try 2 weeks without soy, see if the migraines go away. Or if that's not it, try 2 weeks without any corn and see if that goes away. And you'll be able to see, your energy levels will feel totally different. And again, you'll be able to optimize performance and recovery because you're customizing everything to your body specifically and to what will work best for you. Now, of course, we all know now what to avoid. It's another thing I have to avoid. I'm already vegan. I already don't eat so many foods. So now I want to try to cut out this, and this. But again, don't necessarily cut everything out. Customize. See how you feel your personal best. But I think the other thing that's really important is, what is it that we're going to add to really make our lives so much better? What is it that we're going to add to have that clean, plant-based nutrition, So anything that's high in chlorophyll, really excellent for you. For those of you who have not yet embarked in the wonderful world of seaweed and algae, you can actually integrate that stuff pretty easily into smoothies, and dulse is easy to throw into anything. We'll throw it into pasta sauces, throw it in with spaghetti squash, throw it in with a million different things. And it's really a lot simpler than you would think to add seaweed. Also, you can do strips of dulse and flavor it almost like a bacony kind of seasoning, and it's beautiful. fun. You've got some great things happening with sea vegetables there. Also, a lot of people do not know this, but if you are concerned with your levels of vitamin B12, and you know what, that's a realistic concern for vegans, because you know, it's a realistic concern for the whole population, really. For everyone, it gets harder to get a B12 as you get older, but especially for us. So you're looking to algae as a good source of B12. That's actually a very good source. So that would be, you know, spirulina and chlorella. They're really easy to throw into smoothies. They're really easy to throw into pasta sauces, everything like that. And you can't taste it unless you use a lot of it, and then you can really taste it. So just experiment with the levels a little bit. Experiment a little bit. The other things that you should really be looking into are leafy greens and purples. Believe it or not, some of the greenest foods are actually purple, and that's because they have such a high level of antioxidants, and so the more of these you consume on a regular basis, the more alkaline your body will become, and that's obviously speeding recovery from anything. For us as athletes, we're really looking for, obviously, you know, muscle recovery, speedy muscle recovery. But I mean, even if you're not feeling well, even if you have a cold, you know, that sort of stuff can help your recovery tremendously. The other thing, I would very strongly recommend finding a way to have some mushrooms. Mushrooms are a really good source. They're immune boosting. And I think portobello mushrooms actually do contain vitamin D, and that's a very tough vitamin to get in your daily consumption. Most of the time you have to get it through sunlight, which, okay, it's going to freaking snow again. We're probably not getting any of that anytime soon, unless you're going to Florida. So, some other superfoods that you might want to consider. Raw cacao is amazing, and honestly, if you cook with cocoa, and you substitute, you are not even going to notice the difference. Like, raw cacao tastes so similar, and it's so much better for you. Maca. So if you guys are not familiarized with maca at this point, I have some of that every single day. Actually, it makes, honestly, for you foodies out here, this is like an amazing recovery drink. If you do a mix with almond milk, cacao powder, maca, and then any kind of sweetener you want, and it is like the most divine recovery hot chocolate ever. It is so good. So something that's really easy, and you can just kind of play the sweetener to your taste. We use stevia, but if you want to use like an agave or something like that, it's also really good. So camu, if you're not familiar with that, it has over 100% daily value of vitamin C in, like, seriously about this much. The only thing is you do destroy it, the vitamin C, if you heat it. So camu is best when you have it raw. Lucuma is an awesome source of potassium. Mulberries, another excellent superfood. Goji berries, as we mentioned earlier. If none of you have ever had tiger nuts, that's another one that I strongly recommend. Peely nuts, which are grown in a volcanic soil, so they are super high in micronutrients. They're an awesome source of magnesium, and just, oh my god, the list goes on, and they're amazing. I would absolutely recommend you try them if you have not already. Also a really great salad topper when you're trying to get the most micronutrients for your butt. Mix up you can grind up some dulse and pumpkin seeds together and even mix that with a little nutritional yeast. Easy salad topper, and now you have a ton more micronutrients. And you can see how it becomes really easy to cook and to prepare this way and just kind of integrate it into your daily lifestyle. It's really amazing. The other thing I would strongly recommend now that you guys are, we're indoors, it's really hard to run outside in this kind of weather. It's really hard to get motivated to work out outside in this kind of weather. But you guys still need to make sure you're hydrated. If you're working with athletes, you need to make sure that they are hydrated. I recently was down in Florida with a few of my athletes, and one of the girls actually kind of very close to heat exhaustion. I would say she had a touch of heat exhaustion just because you don't hydrate enough, and of course that's going to affect your energy levels significantly if you're feeling dehydrated. It also affects how well your joints and your muscles move. So in terms of hydration, if you are about to work out or if you're working out, you want to drink at least a Poland Spring size bottle of water before you go out, a half hour prior to competition or a half hour prior to your workout. And the reason why that's essential is because usually by the time you're thirsty, you've already been dehydrated. Your body also absorbs water early on in your workout a lot better. So usually you're going to have, okay, a half hour prior to competition, you have at least one Poland Spring bottle worth of water. You can have more than that a little bit if it's first thing in the morning, especially because guess what, we usually wake up a little dehydrated. Okay? Also, drink more than that if you are going to be on a plane or coming off a plane. This is something I always tell my athletes, especially when they're participating in showcases, which are essential for their recruiting. I'm like, look, you're flying out to California, right? You're going to be on a plane for 6 hours, 7 hours, I forget how long it is, and you're going to be dehydrating in there the whole time. You have to make sure, especially as an athlete, that you are hydrating, hydrating, hydrating. And then in the early stages of the competition, your body will absorb water better, so that's when you want to make sure that you're getting the most of that. So the other thing that we want to kind of talk about a little bit is electrolytes, right? Because those are essential to body function and performance as an athlete too. So when should you have electrolytes and what kind of electrolytes should you have? So electrolytes, if you're a heavy sweater, meaning, and you can tell because your shirt's going to be like, when you take it off, it's going to be like white marks. If it's like that, then you need electrolytes a little bit more than the average person, okay? That means, so you can take, if you like Vega product electrolyte hydrator, which of course I think they're really, really good, then you can just kind of mix one up in there and you can kind of drink it throughout your workout. For someone who's not a heavy sweater, who's like an average sweater, I would say, then you can just kind of like, after an hour of activity, that's when you want to make sure you're getting your electrolytes. And believe it or not, if you're not getting enough electrolytes in your daily workout or as an athlete, then you can oftentimes feel really fatigued just for that reason. So a lot of athletes will come to be like, geez, you know, I'm so tired, like I don't know why I'm like having trouble. And if it's not a dietary source, then sometimes it's just that, okay, maybe you did drink a lot of water and you actually kind of flushed out all the electrolytes in your system at that point. So after an hour of activity, do you make sure that you have some kind of electrolyte? So of course, here's the tough part. Some kind of electrolyte. Should I go get Gatorade with high fructose corn syrup? Powerade with high fructose corn syrup? Probably not a great idea, as we're introducing a lot of inflammation just with high fructose corn syrup, such a highly processed sugar, obviously not so good for you. So a lot of people are saying, well, what about coconut water? I love it, it tastes so good, I heard that it's an excellent source of electrolytes. Sort of. The problem with coconut water as a source for electrolytes is basically that it really doesn't have the kind of salt content that you need to replace in sweat loss. So if you love coconut water as a source for electrolytes, because it's great for potassium, then make sure you kind of mix in a little bit of salt with that. But you can also, of course, make your own electrolyte mix, and that usually is a pretty good way to do things. You can mix in a little bit of agave with lemon, with salt, and kind of work to your own taste buds, work to your own sensibilities that way. And that way you can kind of keep them in our house like all the time. But just remember to have them to make sure your energy levels are up this time of year. Now, so let's say you're going for a run, right? You're like, all right, what's the best thing that I can possibly have before I go for a run? Well, really carbohydrates and fat. So you're like, yes, vegan donut. No, bad, no vegan donut, okay? So instead, you're really looking for like kind of that fruit and nut combination is ideal. I mean, there are a couple of great raw granolas that you can do too that are really excellent. Basically, you're looking for fats and carbohydrates that are easy to digest, okay? Protein, more difficult to digest, so we usually kind of save that for after the workout. So you can experiment around a little bit. You know, another really super easy, if you want to do something fermented and that's got the fat and carbohydrates that you need, there is an excellent recipe for fermented like buckwheat pancakes. It's crazy. You make a kefir with like an almond milk, and you just kind of mix that with equal parts buckwheat, and then you can have that with almond butter, and whoa, you have everything you need now. Fermented foods, you have probiotics, you have the fat from the nuts, you have the carbohydrates from the buckwheat, and buckwheat is great pre-competition because it just kind of keeps going. It just sort of fuels you throughout the whole thing. That's great. But now, what about when you're done? I need a smoothie when I'm done. I need like 46 grams of protein or I'm going to waste away. What's going to happen? Oh my God. Okay, no. You actually don't want a super high level of protein right after you finish your workout because it prevents your body's ability to absorb all the water that it needs, okay? You're not gonna hydrate as well if you have a ton of protein immediately following your workout. So really, again, because when you finish your workout, your glycogen stores are gonna be depleted. You're really looking for a 4-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio after you finish working out. So my favorite are these little like packets of seaweed snacks. Those are like awesome for me post-workout. But you have to experiment on your own. You have to realize that honestly, every human body is a unique system. So some things that work for other people are not going to work for you, and vice versa. So you do have to experiment a little bit. Now, here's where it gets good. 2 hours after you are done with your workout, with your competition, that is when you want a heavy amount of protein. So, like, I know this is where everybody is like, oh yeah, 2 hours after competition, I need like the amount of protein I would find in a steak. And that's not true either, because your body can really only absorb about 26 grams of protein in a sitting. So, you know, if you're looking at like the protein content on a lot of things and you're like, geez, you know, this just doesn't seem like enough, you're not going to be able to do very much with it once you get past 26 grams anyway. So kind of like, just like everything else, it turns into fat. Now again, a little bit of variability depending on the person. I am not a 6'5" football player. I'm sure I could get away with having a little bit more protein if that were the case. But this is kind of on an average, and then you work your way into your ideal state of homeostasis based on your individual preferences. But I wanted to leave it open to questions for a minute here because there's so much. I could kind of go on for like about 4 hours, but I know that we're short on time. So.
Thanks so much. Do you use GABA rice? Do you use GABA rice? GABA.
That's actually not something I've heard of, but you know, I will look it up. Right? I will look it up.
raw granola? Can you talk about brands or where to get that kind of thing?
So the question was about raw granola, and there are some amazing vendors that have that. Actually, just right down there at the Kale Company, they make an awesome granola that's made with kale and nuts, and it's just the best, and I have a slight addiction to it. There's also a company called Living Intentions who's not here, but based out of California, and if you're a granola fan, they make their granola with like superfoods, so you have like a hemp and greens option, you have a maca option, you have a cacao option. They are great, and you can get them in Whole Foods even though they're based out of California. So they're really very good. And I'm missing one. Emmy's is pretty good too. They just came out with a new raw granola made of buckwheat. It's a buckwheat space. Yeah, and they're like 3 tables down. Yeah, we scoped this out yesterday really good, so I know where everything is now.
What are your opinions on BCAAs, brand chain amino acids?
So, were you taking them as a supplement after your workout? Yeah. Okay. Because, I mean, I happen to think like the stuff that's used in recovery, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm a huge proponent for the Vega brand, but their amino acid supplement, and they go post-workout, I think is amazing. And to be honest, that's the only one I've ever tried because they're the only ones with the informed choice label. And if you're an athlete or you are working with someone who's an athlete and it doesn't have the informed choice label on it, it could have anything in it and it could ruin their eligibility. And because I work with college-bound athletes all the time, I mean, I am so careful that anything I tell them to use like do not ruin their eligibility or get them tested positive for anything. But the Vega like recovery stuff, that is amazing. That is so good.
You're fantastic. I really enjoyed your talk. I learned a lot. I'm sure we all have. And there is one thing that you said. First of all, I congratulate you for emphasizing the need for B12 in vegans, and also for recommending seaweed, which is a wonderful food. I would like to disagree with you on something. The B12 in seaweed and algae is a B12 analog which the body cannot use. It can confuse the B12 tests, so the doctor will think that you're adequate in B12. It interferes with B12 absorption in the same way that carbon monoxide will interfere and will combine with hemoglobin and keep you from absorbing the oxygen, attaching the oxygen that you need. After people are vegan for maybe 3 or 4 years, they probably should get a B12 test if they haven't been taking a supplement for it. And but along with B12 test, they need a methylmalonic acid test, MMA, if that's easier to remember, to see if there's been damage done by lack of B12, and a homocysteine test to see if their homocysteine has gone up from lack of B12. So certainly, eat seaweed, but take a B12 supplement, have these tests, and don't think that you don't need the B12 supplement because of the seaweed or the algae. It's quite the opposite. And it's wonderful. Keep doing what you're doing, because athletes really need this information. It's just wonderful. Thank you.
I just wanted to be clear on something, because I'm going to start working out, and I haven't really taken working out seriously since I've been vegan for about a year now. So for pre-workout, you said to focus like on fat and carbs, and for post-workout, you said carbs and protein, but not too much protein. And for, you said 2 hours later is when you can take like up to 26 grams of protein. And then for recovery, you mentioned something about magnesium.
So 2 things, yes. About the B12, yes, I definitely think you should get it tested. I definitely think that's an excellent point. Yeah, I wouldn't say not to take a B12 supplement as a vegan because you've got it, yeah, you've got to be getting it in your system. That's an excellent point. And the other question was about, you know, recovery, magnesium, and so on and so forth. So usually whole food sources of magnesium, mostly nuts are really good sources of magnesium. I think quinoa actually has some magnesium too, and protein, so it's usually kind of a good, quinoa is kind of up there with the superfoods, but it does make for smoother muscle contractions and better recovery in that regard. It's also usually really good if you're a female, you know, like right before your period, it's like most of the time a lot of the cramping can be alleviated if you have some magnesium, eating that, all that sort of stuff, you know. So, are there any other questions?
Regarding superfoods and greens and things of that nature, do you think that the bioavailability is the same if you ate it raw and whole as it would be in a green supplement, like brown greens or powder or something like that?
So I think the thing that you're missing in a powder is you don't really get any of the fiber. You know, so I feel like, let's say you travel, like I travel a lot to be with my athletes, and if I can't do anything else, like that's sort of a go-to, like if I have to. But if you can, it's way better to get in the whole food form because then you get the fiber and you get all of the other benefits and you're not kind of just extracting that out.